Hello, this is Music Tech Help Guy, and welcome to episode 55 of my Logic Pro 10 video tutorial series. In this episode, we're going to talk about sampling drums and working with specifically electronic drums with the EXS24. Most people, I'll be honest, find the Ultrabeat more intuitive for sampling electronic drums, but I find that the EXS24 has a few little options that the Ultrabeat can't quite do for us. But more concerning acoustic drums rather than electronic drums. And we will talk about acoustic drums and drum replacement in a future video. It'll be pretty soon. So, okay, so I've just got a blank instrument track up here. Let me just load the EXS24 on it. I'm going to load this in multi-output today. You can actually load it in stereo to start with, but multi-output will allow you to kind of individually mix different groups or individual samples, kind of like what we did with the Ultrabeat in a past video. So actually, for now, I'll choose stereo, but then I'll change it to multi-output later. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the edit window, just like we did last time, go to zone, and go to load multiple samples, or you can remember the shortcut Control-O. So I'll hit Control-O. And I have some drum samples in my audio drive here. Here we go. And I actually have two different versions of the folder. They're essentially the same samples. We've got a clap, kick, some crashes, everything you typically see in a drum kit, but I've got them labeled two different ways. In this first folder, I've got them labeled just as what they are, hi-hat closed, hi-hat open, so forth and so on. In the second one, I've labeled them with their actual the pitch next to them, because there's actually two different ways you can load in a drum kit. So I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it this first way with this one. This is labeled 001A, where I actually have the pitch on them. So I'm going to say add all, hit done, just like we did last time. And we get our auto map dialog, just like we did in the previous video. In the previous video, I talked about how you can label a sample file with its specific pitch, accidental, remember use sharps, not flats, and then the octave that you want that particular note to go on. It'll automatically map it to the correct key. You can do the same thing with drums here by choosing drums, and what it does is it just reads a root key from the audio file, whatever you name that file. The problem with using this option is that it doesn't always work out correctly, and here's why. Not only have I named the files with the pitch they're supposed to go on, I've also named them with a description of what the instrument is. So sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't work. You can see here with my A#1 hi-hat open 2, it put the root key on A#1 and then put the key range over A#1. So that one worked, but other ones like this one, acoustic snare D#3, put it on E1, and then put the range on E1. So I don't recommend using this this method because it doesn't always work out properly unless you just put the pitch, octave, and accidental identification on the file without naming the sample. And then that can be a trouble because then if you're trying to load it, maybe just take one sample out of that folder, you don't really know what you're looking at. You don't know which one's the snare, which one's the kick, or whatnot. So I'm going to go to instrument, and then hit new to create a new instrument. No, I don't want to save this one. And I'm going to do the load multiple samples thing again. And this time I'm going to use the other one that just has them all labeled with their names. Hit add all, hit done. And I'm going to use the contiguous zones option. And by the way, the whole reason for having this drums auto map feature is that it automatically puts them in one-shot mode and doesn't extrapolate pitches in between notes like it did in the previous video. So I'm just going to say contiguous zones, zone with 1, start note C1. And I have to do a little sort of moving around of these samples. Contiguous zones, like the drum auto map, automatically turns on the one-shot option, which allows the samples to play from beginning to end regardless of how long you hold the key down. So on C1 here, We've got sort of a clap sound going on up. Now, that order might be fine for you if you're willing to work around that order. I like to actually work with the what's called the GM drum kit, which basically is just a standardized order of the way you arrange drum kits. It usually starts with a kick drum on C1, like a rim tap on C sharp one, usually like a snare on D1, usually like a flam or like a clap on D sharp one. E1's usually another snare. F, G, A, B, and C tend to be like toms. F sharp, G sharp, and A sharp tend to be hi-hats. It's not essential that you memorize the GM drum kit, but I like to know the first octave and a half or so, and it lets me build my drum kits the same way every time I build it. So if I need to swap out a preset for another preset that I've made, the kick drum stays in the same place. So if you're really interested in learning what the GM drum kit's order is, just go to MIDI.org and just search up GM drum kit, and you'll see the standard order of drums. So what I'm going to do off screen is I'm just going to move the samples where I want them to go to, and then I'll come right back and show you what I did. All right, we're back, and what I did off screen is I just kind of organized these samples to what I would like, and I kind of sort of followed the GM drum kit. The only problem is that when you start shifting samples around, their key range, basically the key range is the number of keys that particular sample is triggered by, can be changed from its root key. And the problem with that is that the sample can be up-tuned or down-tuned depending on how far away from its root key it is. So for instance, this very first one, actually let's do a crash symbol here. So crash 1 is on, its root key is on D1, but right now I've placed the actual note on C sharp 2. And also when you click on it in the list, you'll see it highlighted down here. So when I crash that, it sounds like that. So the key range is much higher than the actual root key is. So as I pull this closer to its root key, and you'll hear the clap in there because I've doubled up 2 notes on 1 key. But the further down you move it, the further down you move it, the lower tuned it's going to be. And the higher up you move it, the higher tuned it's going to be. So on one hand, it's kind of cool because you can kind of alter the pitch of a note to kind of create new sounds with it, but you can actually do that right here just by adjusting the coarse or fine tuning of it. The coarse tuning is in semitones or half steps, and the fine tuning is in cents, which is there's 100 cents in a semitone. So you can adjust that there anyway. So with drums, I want these to be the same, all the same pitch. And if I try to play this right now, almost all of my samples are not going to be in the correct pitch as the original sample. So what I'm going to do is hit Command A to select everything in the list, and then turn off this pitch option, which is going to ignore the root key column. So basically every sample is going to play exactly as the original pitch of the file. So just going up the list here, I've got sort of like a warm kick, sort of what I'm calling a clean kick, a click sound, electric snare, a clap, another electronic snare, a low tom, mid tom, high tom on F, G, and A. F sharp, G sharp, and A sharp are going to be hi-hats. B and C here are like these little FM horns. C sharp 2 through F2 are all crash cymbals. And then what I did from here on out is, I mean, because that pretty much follows the GM drum kit, with the exception of the FM horns, which is really there's no standardized place for horns in a drum kit. I just kind of put them there because there was 2 keys available. I ended up with these 6 extra samples because I had some extra kick drums, some extra snares, and an extra hi-hat. So all I did is I just started on C again with the kick and started building again upward from middle C. So on C3, I've got this subby bass. I've got a growly bass, some more snare drums, and then another hi-hat. And so that's that's usually what I do. If I end up with extra samples, I just start to build them starting, from an upper octave. Okay, so I can build a drum pattern with this. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go off screen for a moment again, and I'm going to build a basic drum pattern out of these. All right, I'm back. What I did off screen is I just created a sort of a basic drum pattern. I tried to use as many of the sounds as I could, but obviously I wasn't able to use all of them. But I did try to use as many as I could, and basically, unlike the Ultra Beat, there's no step sequencer, so you basically just have to enter in notes in piano roll one by one, which, again, that's maybe one of the reasons why this sampler is not as intuitive for drum sampling as, say, the Ultra Beat is. So let me just play a little bit of what I did here. And there we go. So let me just slow that down a little bit, like 105. Yeah, I like that a little better. Okay, so one of the things that we ran into in the Ultra Beat initially as a limitation, unless you understand how to mix properly, was that everything in the sampler is all going to this one channel strip. So in the Ultra Beat, we talked about how the Ultra Beat could be loaded in multi-output mode. Well, the EXS24 can also be loaded in multi-output mode. So let me just go to my plug or the instrument here and choose multi-output, and it just kind of closes the edit window, but the instrument's still here. What we need to do is we need to set an output for each one of these. An auxiliary output for each one of these instruments. You can do that right here in the mixer column under the output, but I'm going to do it differently, and you'll see that it's kind of similar to what the Ultra Beat had, except we have more added stereo buses here. I'm going to do it a little differently to introduce sort of a new topic, and that topic is groups, sample grouping or zone grouping. What we can do is we can group like samples, like all the kicks can be in a group, all the snares can be in a group, all the hi-hats or all the cymbals can be in a group, and then we can send that whole group out to an aux output, as opposed to having to do this for each individual sample, because you might be dealing with an instrument that has 50 samples in it, and it'll take you a long time to do it with all of them. So I'm going to go to the Groups tab here, and you'll see there's just one group called Group 2. Every time you use that auto map feature like we did, to load these samples, it automatically creates a group. So this group is essentially all of the samples. Why it starts on group 2, I'm not sure. I think it's because the ungrouped samples, or maybe the all group, is considered group 1. And by the way, you can switch between your groups here and view different sets of samples. So on one end, groups are kind of like folders. They're kind of like just an organizational way to, a way to organize your samples. So what I'm going to do is go to Group, New Group, or press Control-G, because I want a group for my kicks, I want another group for my snares, I want a group for the little clicky noise, and sort of effects, and I want a group for hi-hats, cymbals, and toms. So I want 6 total groups. So I'm going to double-click on the first one, and I'm going to name it Kicks. Then snares, hi-hats, crashes, toms, and then effects. well, I'll say sound effects, SFX. There you go. And actually, in my pattern, I didn't even use the horns. So let me throw the horns in there. Let's see where they, here and here, I believe, is where they were. Yeah. All right, let's see what that sounds like. Sure, that'll work, I suppose. Let me get back to my instrument here. And now what I'm going to do is you'll see all of those groups that you created. They'll show up over here on this little side panel here. Come on. For some reason, whenever I turn on my screen capture software, Logic gets a little buggy on me. But anyway, you'll see all these folders over here. You'll see all of this, the groups that we just created. And right now, everything's in kicks because that was originally the group 2 that was created, and these other folders have nothing in them. So I'm just going to click on all zones so I can see everything, and I'm going to assign each one of these samples to a different folder. So I'm just going to go to View, and then you say Zone Group. And then I'm going to pull my group assignment that just showed up over here, and I'm going to assign each one of these to the correct group. So my clap is going to go to, I'm going to actually throw it with the snares, even though I didn't even use it. The click is going to go to the sound effects. The crashes are all going to go to crashes, obviously. These electronic snares are going to go to snares. These FM horns will go to sound effects. The hi-hats will go to hi-hat. All these kicks will go to kicks, which they're already there. Acoustic snares will go to snares. And then lastly, these 3 toms will go to toms. So now what I can do is I can go to my groups and go to the mixer column where it says output, and I can choose for these groups to go to the main output or to an auxiliary output. So basically, Ultrabeat has it has 5 main stereo outputs if you include the main, and then 6 mono. In Logic 10, I believe they added 5 more stereo outputs. So I'm going to use up all the stereo outputs before I even start using the mono outputs. So I'm going to use 3 and 4 for kicks. Snares will be 5 and 6. Hi-hat will be 7 and 8. Crashes will be 9 and 10. The toms will be 17 and 18. Sound effects will be 19 and 20. Why do I not use the main group? I just don't like to. I mean, you can just call it whatever you want it to be called. I just don't like using the main group because it doesn't send it to an EXS24 aux track. It just sends it to the main channel strip. So that's just my personal preference. All right, so now I've got these all routed up. Close this out. Hit save. Close that out. Open up my mixer, Command 2. And just like with the Ultrabeat, you'll see this special little plus sign show up down here if you load the plugin in multi-output mode. So I've got kick, snare, hi-hat, crash, toms, sound effects. So I hit that 6 times to create 6 aux tracks. It automatically assigns them in order, so it's gone up to 9 and 10. I just need to change the toms to EXS1718. And then this one needs to be 1920. And I can double click and name these whatever I want. Kicks, snares, hi-hat, crashes, toms, sound effects. And in order for you guys to actually hear these aux tracks, I'm going to have to make sure I create my little send here. Again, you won't have to do this yourself. This is just so my screen capture software actually picks up sound. So here's what this sounds like now. So you can see now each instrument or each group is going out to a different aux track out here. So my kicks, they're nice and isolated by themselves. I can add effects to them individually. control the volume individually. Maybe I want a little delay on my hi-hat like I did last time. Maybe a little reverb on the crash here. Maybe the toms, I'll add a little delay to them as well. Pull those way down the mix. Maybe a little bit of a chorus effect to these horns. And so you're able to kind of mix each individual group of instruments individually, as opposed to having to put all of your plugins just on the main channel strip. Now, when it comes to panning, you may have different instruments in the different groups that you want panned differently. For instance, my toms right now are all pan center, and I could adjust the pan here. That's going to make all three, the toms, the low, mid, and high, all go to the, the same speaker. So I want to individually pan these voices. Well, this is one more thing that we can do in here. I'm going to go back to the edit window, go to my toms group. Here's my 3 toms, high, low, and mid. And what I want to do is I want to make the pan on these be left, middle, and right. So I want the high tom to be kind of far left, and then the low tom to be far right, and then the mid tom to be right in the middle. Basically, it's negative 100 or positive 100. I don't want it to be far, like hard left and hard right, though. So let's try like 80% to the left and to the right. And by the way, yes, you can double click and type in values as well. And maybe I don't want my mid tom to be completely to the middle either. Maybe just slightly to the right. There we go. But then other instruments like hi-hat, where all of them are basically in the same place in the stereo field, I can just pan them here. Maybe with the crash as well. So let's give this one more listen. And there you go. So that's just how you can sample electronic drums in the EXS24. As I've said before, I feel probably in my field, probably most people also will agree with this, but I feel like the Ultrabeat is a bit more intuitive when it comes to sampling electronic drums. However, when it comes to working with acoustic drums, which we'll probably talk about in the next video or a couple videos out, sampling acoustic drums is actually much better in the EXS24, because there's some advanced MIDI effects that we can apply to samples that we can't really do with the Ultrabeat. So that'll be coming up shortly in one of the next couple of videos. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and thanks again for watching.